and I'm going to live my life.
Yeah. I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? Because actually, I can see that you're putting across to me very truthfully that that's actually your current experience.
Yeah.
That this is now behind you,
Yeah.
and actually, I can fully see that. Absolutely. Yeah. The difficult bit for me is knowing that we've worked out exactly how we've got there, and also whether it's you're able to, as it were, begin to manage these emotional states still, that they're not still going to burst out at a certain point.
Well, it's the fact that they used to affect me to the point that I would actually be violent to either myself or to Jez or to someone else. And I'm not anymore. So that's evidence enough that I'm fine.
That has not occurred anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Good.
All right. So here we see a patient who is done with relationships, and she's never going to go back to any of the borderline behaviors that she had before. And Anthony is not quite believing her that she's in a place where she doesn't need treatment anymore, and that but she's making her case. And she's using a lot of mental state language, and she's actually quite coherently putting together a picture, trying to convince Anthony that she's fine and she can potentially terminate all the gains she made. But we still hear from a mentalization-based perspective, we still hear a lot of rigidity in the way that she views herself, interpersonal relationships. We see her flare up in the session, which all contradicts where she thinks she's at. Anthony is trying to take a mentalization-based approach in trying to get her to reflect on this, trying to kind of get her out of the pretend mode. He always says he didn't think he did that very successfully. I always think it's very hard to do a mentalization-based therapy, demonstrate the pretend mode with an actor when they're pretending. So, but anyway, he always says that he didn't do a good job, but you can see him trying to get her out of that pretend mode, and eventually sharing with her the what's going on in his own mind, or what he's struggling with. And he can't quite put the pieces of the puzzle together, and it doesn't quite make sense to him that she's at this point. He doesn't quite understand how they got there. So he's hoping she can elucidate to him how they got to this point. Yes? It's called pretend mode because she is painting a picture of her progress, and I think what Anthony probably could have done a little bit better earlier on is validate her need to appear that she made a lot of progress. I think then we wouldn't have seen the breakdown earlier on. But there's a disconnect essentially between what she's presenting is in her own mind and what Anthony knows to be the reality of her progress so far. Does that make sense? So we can talk a little bit more about that. We've got some mentalization-based experts in the room that can potentially help unpack it. All right, so I also want to demonstrate this from the CAI narrative. So this is a teenager talking about a very terrible situation with a mom in a non-mentalizing way. So when we code CAIs using the reflective function scale, or AAIs using the reflective function scale, we are looking for how much can the adolescent or the adult mentalize the parent, even in the context of terrible situations. So what happens when your mom gets angry with you? She's horrible. One day I was sitting on the couch taking a nap. She decides, so I've just highlighted the mental state language for you. She decides to get a stick and starts hitting me. It was like a stick, this big black stick from this dustpan. I'd gotten it from school. I wasn't doing anything. She just starts wailing at my back with a stick. It was horrible. So I got up and I started running, of course, and she chased me. She was trying to hit me so bad that she ended up breaking a window with her stick, trying to hit a small child. I don't know what the hell her problem was. And another time she had a boyfriend and I accidentally ate his food. You know, I came home from school, I saw the food, so I'm going to eat it. I didn't even eat all of it. It was like a big family meal, but I ate some of it. He came back and he said, it looks like someone ate my food. So I ate some of the food, so I got persecuted for that, you know. So she got highly upset with me and started hitting me, and she was like persecuted me for eating. I mean, I remember another time, I mean once. So this is preoccupied, insecure, it's hard to follow the narrative, and you see the mental state language in, ascribing. So, Rabbi Tversky talked about being a mensch. I think in mentalization-based term, that is when you are mentalizing to be able to be a mensch towards a caregiver who is maltreating you. That's probably the ultimate form of mentalization, and we're not expecting that of all people. But I'm using this example to illustrate to you. Now, if the child said, for instance, when my mom gets angry, it's really hard to handle for me. She tends to lose control. There was one situation when she took a stick and she hit me. I'm not sure what made her do that, because she's my mom, and I wouldn't expect a mother to want to hit a child, but she did it. It was awful for me. I had to run away, etc. That is a mentalizing interpretation of the same situation. So we can find the mentalization capacity in therapy, like I demonstrated in these transcriptions. And so we were interested in trying to capture this, in a more standardized way, so that people like you can use a measure to assess hypermentalizing in treatment context. So we identified 5 components to hypermentalizing: over-concern with the mental states of others, over-interpretation of others' mental states, inflexible certainty in own beliefs about others' mental states, acting impulsively on assumed mental states of others. I always think there's a lot of disorders that hypermentalize, but borderline patients act on the hypermentalization very, very quickly without kind of investigating, and that is often what gets them into trouble. Second guessing and overinterpretation of own mental states. And so we designed a questionnaire that has these different subscales. An example of overconcern with mental states: I worry a lot about what my parents are thinking and feeling. Overinterpretation is about the mental states. My parents often say I overinterpret interpersonal situations with them. Inflexible certainty in beliefs about other mental state. My feelings about what my parents are thinking is hardly ever wrong. Acting impulsively. I easily lose control in situations with my parents if my feelings get hurt. Second guessing or overinterpretation of own mental states. I often feel angry at my parents because I feel confused about my own feelings. And because we conceptualize mentalization in the context of attachment relationships, we have 3 versions of this: a parent, a boyfriend, girlfriend, closest friend, and each have 26 items. And so in the first study to test the validity of this measure, we gave it to 690 undergraduate adolescents, so 18 to 25-year-olds. We did the mask again. We did an acceptance and mindfulness questionnaire for convergent validity, as well as emotion dysregulation and reflective function questionnaire. The psychometrics of this scale seems to be good. And here you see then the construct validity. And so you see, again, a negative correlation with the mass total score, so overall mentalizing. The higher hypermentalizing, the lower the overall mentalizing capacity. And then out of the 3 subscales, excessive TOM, less TOM, and no TOM, it only correlates with excessive TOM on the experimental task. So again, validating that we're capturing the type of mentalizing with this questionnaire that we want to capture. And then it has the expected correlations with mindfulness, emotion dysregulation, and reflective function through a reflective function self-report questionnaire. And when we look at the 3 types of contexts, parents, boyfriends and girlfriends, and closest friend, it's really the parent context that does the best in terms of construct validity. So people who are writing to me to ask can they use the scale and they have a little time, I say just use the parent version. I don't know that. We need to do more research to see if there's real incremental validity for closest friend and romantic partner. At the moment in adolescence there doesn't seem to be. In the second study to validate the measure, we took 35 adolescents meeting the DSM criteria for BPD, 48 psychiatric controls, 83 healthy controls. And we gave them a hypermentalizing questionnaire, and you can see again this picture that we saw with the mask earlier, where healthy controls have low hypermentalizing, psychiatric controls have more hypermentalizing, but it's still significantly different from the black bar, which is the borderline kids who have highest hypermentalizing across all 3 types of context, attachment context, and for the total score. All right, so in terms of then the general characteristics of intervention to address mentalization impairment, the NEABPD approach has to be in keeping with the patient's mentalizing capacity. So the therapist's demand for mentalization in the session is guided by the patient's capacity at that moment to mentalize. It has to be affect focused. So we are really concerned about not the intellectual, and pretend mode is often an intellectual mode. We're concerned about accessing the emotional experience of the patient. It's explicitly interpersonal and affective, and we relate to current event or activity, the current mental reality. So it's evidence-based, and in that sense it's similar to CBT. We really want to delve into what happened, what's happening right now, or what happened this week. We're not so much concerned about dynamic workings of the past. De-emphasize unconscious concerns in favor of near-conscious or conscious content. And the spectrum of interventions then include empathic validation, reassurance, support and empathy. One step up from that, basic mentalizing, which is clarification, exploration and challenge. Basic mentalizing then continuing with affect identification and affect focus. And mentalizing the relationship is the last stage or phase, and we map that really in terms of where the patient is at, both in terms of the therapeutic process, but also where their affect is at in the moment. So here you can see safe in high anxiety and safe in low anxiety. So when the patient in Anthony's session is getting emotionally activated and she says, "Are you saying this is bullshit?" Anthony is at that point is not going to mentalize the relationship. He's going to go back to supportive and empathic mode, or clarification, elaborate. That's actually what he does. He's in clarification, elaboration and challenge. When we are in low anxiety, we can do more of these more highly reflective components of MBT, basic mentalizing, affect and affect focus on mentalizing the relationship. So specific strategies then in terms of hypermentalizing to address pretend mode. Remember that what we think about pretend mode is ideas form no bridge between inner and outer reality. The mental world is decoupled from external reality. There's a dissociation of thought, a hypermentalizing or a pseudo-mentalizing. Reflects the explicit mentalizing being dominated by implicit, inadequate internal focus, poor belief, desire, reasoning, and vulnerability to fusion with others. And it's managed in therapy by interrupting a non-mentalizing process, as we saw Anthony try to do. So encourage the patient to step back from this collapsing and appearance and reality, drawing attention to the patient's vulnerability to the emotional contagion, drawing attention to their difficulty in inserting doubt or uncertainty into a process of inference. Help the patient integrate intense sense of affective knowledge or awareness, whether self or others, with more reflective and cognitive knowledge. You're essentially slowing down the interaction. You're slowing down the interaction to get the patient to be more reflective of what is happening, both from their perspective and the perspective of other people in the interaction that they're describing. The aim for the integration of cognitive belief states, a cognitive belief of how other people's attitudes and behaviors are shaped by their own mental states and beliefs, and affective knowledge, which is dominated by inferences drawn from one's own feelings, self-affective states of propositions. So essentially where you want to get the patient is in the middle on those axes. When people are in a mentalization breakdown, they are at explicit sides of the axes, and your job is to move them back into the middle, integrate self-other, integrate implicit, integrate affect and cognition. Work towards shifting the patient's thoughts and feelings between the self and the other in a consistent, flexible, responsive way to prevent getting stuck in paranoid mode of mentalizing and differentiation of self and others. And so I'm just going to kind of start winding up. Several trials have been conducted, and remember this whole conference seems to be about multiple perspectives. Treatment trials have been conducted for many of these perspectives on borderline personality disorder in BPD. Andrew is no doubt going to talk about CAT later on, and there's been an RCT for CBT, there's been several DBT RCTs, there's been one RCT in adolescents for MBT, and then also a pilot study for MBT, and then ERT, emotion regulation therapy. So there are this emerging evidence of evidence-based approaches to treating BPD in adolescents specifically. And so I want to revisit the translational spectrum. We've kind of come full circle with this. And I've put in red some of the things that I've spoken about in this last hour. We've talked about these interpersonal components of BPD. I didn't talk about genes, but there's evidence for oxytocin-related genes in BPD, which are seen as the attachment genes related to our attachment functioning. Neurobiological endophenotype in potential reduced insular activation. Hypermentalizing then is a neurocognitive endophenotype. High attachment insecurity as behavioral endophenotype. And then the pretend mode at the level of therapeutic target, and so forth. We've seen how mentalizing is influenced by the environment, the attachment quality, how attachment is a moderator. I've talked about mentalizing across typical and atypical development, and hope that I've also talked about measures that can operationalize hypermentalizing so that we can assess change in treatment through using some of these mentalizing measures. So I'm going to finish by talking about the Global Alliance for Prevention and Early Intervention of BPD. Perry mentioned this already a little bit. All of the folks that were there at that main meeting in 2014 were all from different perspectives, treating BPD in adolescents or thinking about BPD in adolescents. And so we really got together and wanted to develop this agenda. We called it the Global Alliance for Prevention and Early Intervention, and we've, since that original meeting, which was just 25 people in New York, which was more or less North American, except for Andrew was the lone non-North American researcher clinician. There we've expanded to also include European colleagues, and this is our invitation to please join us. You can write to me, Andrew or Perry, if you're interested in becoming a member of GAP. So our goal is to promote the early detection and timely intervention for borderline personality disorder, match treatments to individual development and to the phase and stage of the disorder. Andrew will talk more about that. Work with families at all stages of intervention, improve access to evidence-based treatment, increase the variety of available treatments across all levels of health system, to develop the mental health workforce by updating knowledge, culture and practice in relation to borderline personality disorder in young people, to address problems of stigma surrounding BPD and the individual and family standpoint, and to integrate service user advocacy in all of the above aims. And since 2014, as I said, we've expanded globally to also include European colleagues, as well as Australia and South America. We've written a position paper that we're about to submit. We also have a special series in a journal called BPD and Emotion Dysregulation that will be a sympathetic home to people wanting to submit papers on adolescent personality disorder in general. So don't be put off by emotion dysregulation or BPD specifically. This is personality disorder in general and beyond emotion dysregulation as a mechanism. But we'll have a special series running that will review and publish papers on adolescent personality disorder work. We have several committees working on different domains of adolescent BPD assessment,